This is fun and easy. So basically, I'm asking everyone to respond to the experiments in general. Just what's it like? How are they useful? What happens when you try this, etc. And I'm going to just name 3 of them. But if you have another one handy,
try to stick to one of the 3. But if not,
Al says stick to the
name
3.
another one.
Okay. So here's the 3 that I pulled out. Write as you think, as close as you can come to this. That is, put pen to paper and don't stop. Experiment with writing fast and writing slow. Second one, write a poem that reflects another poem as in a mirror. And the third one, attempt writing in a state of mind that seems least congenial. So,
Love it.
Amber Rose.
Amber Rose, are you ready? Do you want to skip?
Yeah, no, I'm ready.
Okay.
I'm always ready.
I know you are.
Can I see your piece of paper, though? Okay, you just want us to respond.
See any one of them.
Yeah, any one of those.
Yep.
Okay, well, I'm going to respond to the second one. Write a poem that reflects another poem as in a mirror. And I actually activated that writing experiment, and I did it with a poem by Elizabeth Willis. Elizabeth Willis. Terrible. No,
Sorry,
but shout out
Liz.
to you, Elizabeth Willis. No, truly, because I went to that poetic experiment at a time when actually, Al, you had invited me to read a poem at some Kelly Writers House event that was in New York. And I felt like my graduate school brain was just inundated with essays and formulaic sentences. And I felt like I could not even come up out of that kind of thinking mind to create something that felt like a poem. And so I went to her poem. You're going to say the name of the poem right now because you know
Survey.
it. Yes. I went to Survey and literally tried to write a poem that mirrored that line for line, but with experiences and places and touch points that I knew intimately. And it was really great because it allowed me to like have this creative experience in a moment when I felt totally lacking of creativity, and really kind of opened me back up to my own poetic writing. So that's my response.
I love that because you're never empty of creativity. It's just, how do we get there? How do we get from one mindset to another? And these experiments are kind of like a jump start. Mm-hmm. And there's so many choices that if one does, if you're like, no, I don't want to do that one. If you keep reading, eventually there'll be one. I mean, I've been doing them all these years. I mean, since I was an infant poet. Mm-hmm. And there's still ones that I haven't tried or that I can't remember if I did. Mm. Okay, fantastic. So next we go to Kate.
I just want to acknowledge how challenging these challenges are, at least for me, not you, Lainey.
The experiments are challenging. Say more. How so?
Well, the one that struck me was writing. I can't find it on the list, but the frame of mind least congenial, which is kind of a shocking challenge to me. I'm not sure I could do that. But write a bad poem. I'm so intrigued at these. All feel to me like goals. Like I want to do each of these and figure out a way to loosen up my practice in order to be able to affect any of these. There's so few that I have undertaken or could imagine, which tells me maybe I'm stuck too close to a track or something. But I love them all.
Great, thank you. Next we go to Gabby.
Sure. I'll talk about the congeniality one. Congeniality makes it sound like it's in a pageant, but the congenial one, because I mentioned it earlier. I think to me, it feels like one of the most toxic things for continual productivity in our craft is the belief that poetry can only be written when the circumstances are quite right, when when the kids are asleep and I've already done all my work deadlines and the sun is shining in a particular way and I have a candle lit, all that stuff. Like, I think like we get very precious about when and how we can write poetry, and I think it just leads you to not really writing poetry. I mean, it's just incredibly difficult to keep up with that kind of execution.
Bullshit, right?
So for me,
an excuse.
Sorry?
It's an excuse to not do it.
Well, I think some people believe that there's a kind that's the only way to really get to the thing, and that's the only way to make it worth your time to, because some people think poetry, it's gotta touch you, it's gotta hit you, it's gotta come from the genie. It's, there's a real sense that poetry needs to do something. And I think actually, like, I mean, it's just really pulverizing to oneself to put yourself under those kinds of expectations. So I think like the writing in a space that's least congenial is like a good practice round for just writing as you go in your life. Like, take, like, I don't know, I just imagine writing while breastfeeding the baby, writing while you're at the nightclub, writing while you're supposed to be doing another kind of work assignment, right? All these different things. Writing, like, I like doing a thing where I listen to music that isn't thought of as like poetic music. Like you can like write while listening to death metal, or write while listening to like harsh noise, something that's like totally not the muse's lute. All those kinds of things I think are just good kind of practice for writing in a way that feels like you just meet it when you can, and as you can, in a way that keeps that muscle moving. I don't know. So I really like these exercises, but I agree with Kate that they are there is a shock about a lot of them because they go really against some preconceived notions about what poetry should be.
Kate?
I just wanted to say I wrote 100 poems while breastfeeding a baby. So I guess what is genial is different for each of us.
Totally.
Which
that's true.
Is awesome.
I love everything you're saying, Gabby. And I also think that writing poems in the most congenial circumstances, if they ever happen, is boring. And the work is boring because it's like excluding everything that's challenging in our lives. And that's not real.
Not real at all.
It's boring. Okay, next we go to Allie.
I'm struck by what Kate said about seeing some of these particular exercises as goals. And I think that that's what's so great about the individual exercises and just like the breadth of the exercises, because it really makes process the goal, as opposed to this kind of like polished thing that we'll be like proud or super confident to share or like display. Which again, I think like if you are trying to consistently engage in any practice, like you kind of have to just prioritize the process over the product to some degree. And I'll just speak to the first one, right as you think, like don't stop. I mean, I feel like people have adopted that. I don't know if Bernadette Mayer like came up with that first, or if that's just kind of like classic free writing, but I remember being told to do that like in middle school and just like hating it. Like I got this like physical feeling of like discomfort. Like there was like something like crawl, like it just like so uncomfortable. And I like continued to feel that way for years and years, until at a certain point, I just became more comfortable doing that. And I guess I'm still thinking about what Richard was saying about the unconscious several minutes ago. And sometimes it's hard to just kind of like sit with yourself. And sometimes like what's harder is to like language yourself like at every single moment, even if it's just like, oh, I don't know what to do. Like, I hate this. Oh no, oh no, oh no, which is like what it looks like very often. But I guess like there's kind of getting back to what we were talking about with like what is incongenial. Like there's something very like productive or at least enlightening about like what comes out of that like literal disturbance that you're kind of like forcing on yourself.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Allie. And now we go to Lila.
I'm also going to talk about the congenial mindset. I was thinking about the idea of like that being this perfect setting, perfect time of day, everything's done, or just having that spark of creativity where when you want to write, and how that can come at any moment, but also that it can just not come and you don't have the words and your mind is not giving you that. And the idea of that being the least congenial mindset, writing when you just can't, or feel like you have nothing to say. I feel like that would be a really interesting experiment. We talked a lot about this in class yesterday, and this morning when I woke up, the first thing I thought about was like, I'm so droggy. What if I wrote a poem right now?
Yes, like, do it.
I think I just rolled over and went back to sleep, to be honest. But I did have the thought. But I want to do that because I want to write when I can't, and I want to be able to create that muscle.
You'll write when you can, but if you start to write when you can't, then you're a writer, maybe. Maybe that's the definition of what writing is.